Hello everyone, welcome to Handyman in the Field. This week in the field, I'm going to be covering everything that we did this specific past week. Hopefully you guys are enjoying these videos. I appreciate everyone who's been making some comments. We're just getting started here, but this is the second this week in the field, and as you can tell, I'm going to try to make this a little bit tighter than last week's, specifically because I don't want to be in a scenario where we are talking for 40 minutes. However, if that's something you guys enjoy, please let me know. But this is this week in the field. So starting off with Sundays, I typically, as I've said in the past, or maybe I didn't, I don't work on Sundays. If something comes up or if I've got to make a run for supplies or something for something coming up, I'll do that, but I don't typically work on Sundays. But Monday, I specifically had a new property management job. This one was about 50 minutes away from my location. It was a single-family house, but it was a rental, and it's for a company that I've done a bunch of other work, including the apartment building that I worked on last week. This one, there was a punch list of things. They moved into the property. They had a punch list of things that they needed to get taken care of, and I was basically sent there to get the stuff taken care of. Now, as far as what needed to get done, the list is kind of interesting. There wasn't, I wouldn't say like a ton of stuff. The biggest thing on the list was that there was an issue with the toilet. The toilet was leaking, but specifically what I did on the trip there was there were two lights that were hanging. I'm going to provide pictures as much as I can of stuff that the before and after if it's relevant. But there was two light fixtures that were hanging. They were specifically hanging because when the house, which happens to be a new construction house, when it was built, they painted and didn't reattach these. So the lights need to get reattached. That was something real simple. There was a smoke detector that was missing. The location was present, but the smoke detector was not. So there needed to be a smoke detector. The owners, or maybe it was the property management company, they had a smoke detector sent from Amazon to the tenants, and I just had to install that. So there was that. There was a toilet paper holder in the master bathroom that had really bad anchors in the wall, and it was falling. One of the brackets had fallen off, and the other one was super loose. So I swapped those out for toggle bolts. I've used a variety of anchors. At some point I'll show you my bin over there that I have that has a ton of different types of anchors. You'll learn as you go. There's a certain anchor for each thing. And in this case, there was a lot of anchors that there's a lot of anchors that I've come to realize do not work very well on toilet paper holders or towel holders, and I typically stay with toggle bolts. There's a couple other ones, but toggle bolts typically are the one to use. So put some toggle bolts. The only catch, of course, was that there was a missing, the tube that holds the toilet paper was missing, and they didn't have that. So that wouldn't typically require a go back. However, we'll get to what came up next. The next thing was that I was told that there was a decorative drawer front that needed to be reattached. What it ended up being was it was a vanity that has the front drawer front right underneath the sink, and the drawer front, the clips that hold it in place were broke. So typically you could just get a set of clips, and they have the clips where like you put in a screw and they like slightly turn, and all you have to do is just reach up there and just make sure it holds it in place instead of the default ones that came with it. The problem was that the ones that were there, it was broken, but there was a bigger problem. The reason they were broken was actually because the actual drawer front itself was twisted, warped, whatever you want to call it. It was basically gone in a direction where there's no way they would sit front. So that automatically, I knew I was going to have to go back for that after I tracked down where to get the storefront. Now, luckily, because it's new construction, the drawer front that was there actually had a identifying label on it. If it didn't, it would have become a lot bigger of a problem to try to figure out where to get that from. But I was able to track that down after I left the property, which I'll get into that in a minute. But There was a piece of trim that needed to be just nailed in. And then we get to the toilet. So ultimately what ended up happening was the toilet, they had a towel underneath the toilet and you couldn't tell exactly what the issue was. They specifically said in the notes that when sitting on the toilet tank leaks. So what I did was I took a look and tried to figure it out. Initially the toilet seat was extremely loose, so I tightened that up. What ended up being the issue was that the tank screws that were on the toilet itself, they actually had a problem where the back one was too tight and the front ones weren't tight enough. So every time someone leaned back, there was just enough flex where it flexed, and then water would come out from the middle, the actual main. Now I can't remember the name, but the main hole where the water goes through, there's a rubber gasket on that, and it was able to flex just enough where some water was getting out. So all I ended up doing was I ended up taking out the existing tank screws and then putting in a new set of tank screws that had nuts in between, so that the way they would be the right tightness and not over tightened, and that resolved that. That was the only thing that really took a larger amount of time, because I have to disassemble it, get the water out. I wasn't exactly prepared for that because my notes that I had from the property manager said that the toilet was leaking when somebody sat on it. So I was thinking it was going to be a issue with the wax ring, and it wasn't. So, I mean, luckily I had my plumbing kit, which has extra tank screws in it because I've ran into that problem a couple of times. And then the only other thing that got added was there was something on the list that said something about stair trim, but the tenant who was there did not have any idea what that was. I think her husband wrote the list of what needed to be done, and she wasn't aware of what that problem was. But the trim piece that was on the side of the vanity was what she thought it was, took care of that. The only other thing that she brought up was that there was a tack strip right inside the master bedroom. They had LVP and then carpet, and the tack strip, when they put in the carpet, they did not get to the edge and then fold it over so that it would be double length right there. It's a single length, so you could feel the tacks very slightly if you stepped in the wrong spot. So she just asked if I could hammer down those tacks to get those to be not so sharp for anybody who steps there. So I took care of that. So then when I left, I had a couple of phone calls that came in while I was at that job. But before I got into it, I looked up the label that I found on that drawer front, tracked it down, figured out it was a Aristocraft cabinet. Looked for somebody local to me that sold those cabinets. Called them up, asked them if they could get a replacement piece, and long story short, I got back to them within a couple of days and checked in, and they said they could get it. It was going to be $35 for the drawer front, and they could have it within 2 weeks. I ended up getting a phone call on Friday, picked it up earlier today, which is Saturday. That was the only thing I did for work today other than make a return to Home Depot. But picked up that drawer front and then made a new connection with a cabinet company that I've never worked with, because I don't do a lot of cabinet stuff, but if they can get me replacement doors, that has come up a couple of different times, and most of the time I've never even thought about replacing the door fronts, because sometimes you can't get that stuff if it's, it's been 10 years. They might not even be manufacturing that style anymore. But at least I know where to check now. So that was the whole trip there. I didn't actually charge them yet because I need to go back for the drawer front, and I'll bring the toilet paper tube to take care of that. But when I left, there was a phone call or a text message I had from an existing customer who I've worked at their house, and I've worked at a property that they rent out, and they said that there was an issue with the door going into the garage at the rental property, and they wanted to know if I could get to it that day. Luckily, because this first job worked up quickly, that job, I ended up getting in touch with her. She said that they would be home Monday and Friday, working from home, so as long as I could go on one of those days, but the sooner the better. It was Monday, went and took care of it. Had to stop at Home Depot to get a new doorknob. The doorknob was $30, and the labor was just the general service charge was $150. So we're talking $180 for that. The only thing that I had to do afterwards was the duplicate key. I just had to drive the second key over to the actual landlord, so they had a key for that. They talked about some other things that they want done at their own property, but none of that is necessarily materializing at this point. It was just things that they were asking about, other things they wanted to get done in the future. So I'm sure we'll get to that stuff down the line, but everybody's got time and budget constraints, so it's just a matter of when is it they want to move forward. So that was basically my entire Monday. After that, skipping over to Tuesday, Tuesday morning I had a job with an existing customer who's actually moving out of town. That customer, I've done a bunch of different things. I swapped out a screen door at one point. I did some flooring in his basement laundry area. I did replaced a bifold door that was broke with an accordion style door in his basement. I think there was a light fixture at one point. I recalled his tub. A slew of different things, but this time, turns out he's actually selling his house. He's moving out of state, and he already had an inspection done by the village. Now, some of the villages in our area require inspections before you put your house on the market, and then it's like a blanket inspection that because the village does it, it's a neutral party, doesn't benefit the buyer or the seller, but they are actually telling you what needs to get done. So he had gotten in contact with me last week. There was a couple of GFCIs that needed to be replaced, smoke detectors, but basically what ended up happening with that job was went there that morning. The only thing that changed from his original list that he gave me was that there was a grounding wire that needed to be installed for the hot water heater, which was not part of his original list, but he said if I was going to be there just to take care of it while I was there. So swapped out GFCIs. There was three in the kitchen that needed to be replaced. Swapped out those. There was one in the bathroom that needed to be replaced. And then we had to install interconnected smoke detectors. Now, in most newer construction, when I say newer, I mean like 1990s or more here in Illinois, there is spots for hardwired smoke detectors. Unfortunately, this is before that, so they want them to be interconnected. So there's not a ton of options that you can do because the battery ones are not necessarily interconnected. Happened to find a set of them on Amazon that were a combination of smoke and carbon monoxide, and I would not typically use a smoke detector from Amazon. However, because this customer was leaving and the only requirement was to have 6 smoke detectors that were interconnected, I wanted to try to get them the best value for their money, because ultimately if I would have gotten the typical kitty ones that you get at Home Depot or a variety of other places, those are anywhere from $40 to $60 a piece depending on what type they are. And the issue is that $60 a piece and you need 6 of them, you're looking at almost $400 with tax before you even do anything with installing them. The ones that I found on Amazon I think were like $140 for a 6-pack. And they were already interconnected. And basically interconnected just means that if one goes off, the other ones go off. So if there's a fire in the basement and it starts going off, it'll make the ones upstairs in the bedrooms go off, so that way you have you know right away that they're going off. So we ended up replacing those and then putting in the grounding wire, and that was basically it. Great customers. I've had them, like I said, I've done a variety of work with them for the last like 3 or 4 years. It's unfortunate that they're moving, but they're an older couple, and I think they're moving out of state specifically to be closer to family. So that's what happens. So sometimes you lose customers, sometimes you get you find new customers. And then speaking of new customers, Wednesday I had something personal that I needed to take care of that was like a 4-hour round trip. So because of that, I didn't have any work on Wednesday. That's one of the benefits of working for yourself and making your own schedule, is that you can have days where if you need to take care of something, you've got a doctor's appointment, you got to get your kids to a doctor's appointment, you can do that. that's the biggest thing, is making sure that you have the ability to do those other things. Because if I just worked a normal job and I had to show up at a certain time and I had to leave at a certain time, you got to take sick time. It's a completely different thing. Now, I don't get paid vacation time, so there's pluses and minuses with that. But the ability to work my own schedule is nice. In the fall, I have 2 boys that play football, and their practices, there's a lot of them, and you got to get them to and from practice. Even with carpooling, and there's still a lot of driving around. So with that, I can make sure that I'm around to be able to get them back and forth where they need to go, and in combination with my wife's schedule. So, like I said, nothing on Wednesday. Oh, I didn't say the price. The price for the work on Tuesday was $485, and that included a amount of $235 in materials, which included the grounding wire, the GFCI outlets, and the smoke detectors. The labor came out to like $250 for that, and I was there for just about, I think it was either just under or just over 2 hours total. Most of the time for GFCI outlets, I have a set price on how much, because I know how long it's going to typically take. Now, something could happen once I open up the existing outlet and find out it's a rat's nest of wires, and then you're in a whole different scenario. But generally speaking, I have a set idea of how long it's going to take. With the materials, it's between $40 and $50 per GFCI, depending. And typically, the more they have, I lean more towards that $40, because I can also get a multi-pack of outlets that ends up being a little bit cheaper too. I don't like keeping an insane amount of inventory. The only thing I have a ton of inventory for is drain parts for plumbing underneath the sink, because I've ran into a million issues of not having a washer when I need it, not having the tailpiece when I need it. So I have a lot of extra of that stuff, but for the most part, other than having wire specifically for running electrical and things like that, I don't have tons and tons of GFCIs or outlets or breakers or anything like that. I don't keep that stuff. I'm lucky enough to live near a Home Depot. I'm about 10 minutes away from one Home Depot, 15 minutes away from a different Home Depot, and most of the places that I work are within 15-20 minutes of a Home Depot as well. Now, round trip in the middle of a work day, you're talking 30-40 minutes to go round trip, and then to actually get the item if you know exactly what you need to get. That obviously eats away at your time, but if you know you're going to need parts ahead of time, I try to schedule pickups. So for example, with this, I had the GFCIs and the ground wire at Home Depot just to pick up. So all I had to do was swing by, and I drive past it on a regular basis, so it wasn't a big deal. But that one was that. So on Thursday, we get to a completely different scenario. It was a brand new customer. This customer contacted me a couple weeks ago. This was when their schedule lined up with my schedule. They needed 3 bathroom exhaust fans replaced. They had 3 different bathrooms. They had the original fans that were installed by the builder probably 30 years ago, and they wanted them all replaced. One of them was having an issue. It wasn't working very well. It was very loud, and the other 2 were just loud, and they just wanted to replace them all at the same time. So that specific, that one, I started and was done within just about 3 hours. The total on that one was let me think. I think it was $350 for materials and $600 for labor, and like I said, it was about 3 hours, and that included taking out the existing one, rehooking up the new one, sourcing and delivering the new fans. That included bringing the new fans, obviously, and then disposing of the old fans. I'm looking around because I had them sitting here, but I already sorted through them and threw out the stuff, and that was that. Now, that job, again, I had something else I needed to do that afternoon. One thing you're going to notice when I'm talking about my jobs is sometimes I'm going to say I only work 3 hours, And you're going to think to yourself, wow, that's not that long at all. And it isn't. I'm not sitting here saying that every day I work, 8-10 hour days. I have had days that are like that, but that is not a common thing for me. I don't typically work. I do have the luxury of not having to have a jam-packed schedule all the time in order to make, an insane amount of money. I don't have to necessarily do that. That is not everybody. I understand that I'm in the vast minority when it comes to that. But I also never pass up work either. If it's something that I can take care of and it's something that I know I can do, I rarely will ever pass it up, even if it's something outside of my comfort range, if I know that I can take care of it. A perfect example is last year I did a couple of decks, repairing some decks, not building decks. I didn't do that, but it was like repairing the baseboards that are on the decks, and then painting decks or staining decks. And I honestly, in the heat of summer, that's like the worst thing in the world to do, in the heat of the summer, staining a deck. It's like it's like the bane of my existence. Now, 2 years ago, I actually rebuilt a deck from the existing joists up. So floorboards, fascia boards, railings, probably the biggest deck job I ever did. Hopefully the only one I ever will do. That deck, I probably way undercharged for that deck as well, because it was the first one that I really did. But it was a lot of work. It was an insane amount of work, and I was outside in the sun a lot. And while I understand that there's plenty of people who do that, that's not what I would prefer. And luckily, I have the luxury of being able to choose what I can and can't do. And there is a lot of companies in my area that will do decks and are way more efficient than a single person who maybe has a helper, and they can get it done a heck of a lot faster. That said, on Friday, the job was to replace, it was a new customer, but it was a referral from her son, who I previously worked for back in December and November, on 2 different jobs. And this job was take out an existing kitchen sink, faucet, and disposal, and the plumbing underneath the sink, install a brand new sink, new faucet, new disposal, and new plumbing underneath. Now, I typically don't like reusing plumbing, especially in kitchens. I will always prefer to, replace all of the pipes that are there, just because it is an absolute pain to get everything to line up perfectly, especially when you adjust something slightly like a disposal that was at a different location. And it's kind of disgusting when you take out those pipes. If you've ever had to take out a P-trap off a bathroom where there's a woman who's using makeup, and she uses, she cleans her makeup off and it goes down the drain, or toothpaste or any other, face products and stuff like that. That stuff, it gets gunky in the drain. So if I'm replacing something, I'd rather just replace all of that stuff just so that it's clean and clear and ready to be, used for another 20 years. So for the most part, there really wasn't a whole lot of issues. The only weird thing was that there was, for the outlet or for the disposal, there was electric coming into a box, and then there was a switch, and then the electric going out of the box, Greenfield coming in the box, Romex going out to the actual old disposal. Swap that out for Greenfield going from the switch back to the box, or to the disposal, so that way it was up to code. And then redid all the plumbing. The only thing that was unfortunate about the sink was that the sink, no clips, sits in place, just use silicone to seal it off and try to get it to stay. The silicone that I prefer to use, especially on something like that, is, I think it's, I can't remember the brand, but it's ultra clear. I use this stuff on everything. When I'm sealing electrical boxes on the outside of houses, when you're replacing the outlets or replacing the cover or something, because a lot of times the inspection will call that there has to have an in-use cover on outdoor outlets. Resealing those boxes, I use this ultra clear silicone. It works great. The only catch is it doesn't dry immediately. It is actually paintable after 24 hours. which most of this stuff is not. But it does not. I did not realize it wasn't going to cure faster, so that it would actually hold the sink in place. And the sink obviously weighs a lot. It was not an ideal situation, but got it to work. I thought it, in the end product, it looked really good. The sink looked really good. The faucet was really nice. She went from obviously white and brushed nickel faucet to black, and then had a new disposal at the same time. So all in all, it was a great. It makes the area in her kitchen look way better, especially because that older sink was kind of rough, just because it was older. And it was a plastic material. Not plastic, but a thicker plastic material. So that entire job was $650. There was some, she bought the sink, the faucet, and the disposal. I bought the plumbing parts for underneath, the electric whip for the disposal, and obviously the caulking, and then any of the other little consumables that I needed. Probably came out to like less than $100. I was there for 4.5 hours. So it was a little bit longer than some of the other jobs. When I was all done, she listed off about 3 or 4 other projects that she potentially wants to do, but it's a matter of whether she actually wants to end up doing them, because she's talking about potentially selling that house as well. So it's a matter of, is it worth it to do it? Something you always wanted to do. It's always that fine line. And then, like I said, here it is Saturday. The only thing I had to do was return the extra materials that I had bought for that job on Friday, and then pick up that drawer front, which I'm hoping to get back over there and get that taken care of this upcoming week. As of right now, this coming week is a little bit slower because I have a couple of pending projects. I have a door. I think I talked about this because I went the estimate last week. I have a set of bifold doors that I'll probably be staining inside my garage this week, and I have a couple of other jobs that I need to get a couple of things started with, like some parts ordered and things like that I'll be doing in a couple of weeks. So that was basically my week. Not a bad week by any means. Not a lot of, as I would put it, billable hours, but there was a lot of actual money coming in because a lot of those jobs were higher paying. But yeah, it was a good week. Can't complain. And obviously we've got some more things going now. One of the things that I just want to say is this is not built. I had this entire setup way before, but this is in fact the cleanest it's been since probably a year and a half. I haven't had this stuff cleaned off. I've got a few things over here that I need to take care of, but this is the cleanest my workbench has been in like a year and a half. And it was mostly because I got tired of looking at it, and I really do like organizing stuff. So I've been spending a lot of time after my jobs in the afternoons trying to get this stuff taken care of. Up above, I'll go through some of this stuff in a future video, but up above I've got bins that have different things. I've got a lot of stuff like super organized. I'm very proud of how organized I am, because the few other people that I've worked alongside or worked with, their stuff is kind of all over the place. And I am the type of person where if I can be efficient, I want to be as efficient as possible, whether that means buying a new tool that is specifically for that job, as long as it's not going to break the bank with, what I'm making off the job. I will buy it, but also making sure that I have a way of organizing my stuff in a manner that makes the most sense. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. This was this week in the field with the Handyman in the field, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks.